It's February the 7th, 2022. How are ya? Welcome. So we got an incredible 7 people on the stream tonight. Amazing. It's a decade of hard work. I got 7 people. We're killing it. Welcome back to the most strange topic in human history, known as nuclear. It's amazing. So the IAEA is not going to protect you from the nuclear industry. They make a living by killing you, not protecting you. Like the military, like your atoms for peace. The A-10 Warthog only shoots dirty bombs. And Bradwell B in the United Kingdom, nuclear power plant is going to be put in farmland so they can just poison millions every year. Yay, again. It just doesn't seem real that you would build a nuclear power plant in farmland. And the reason behind it, of course, is the radiation is always hemorrhaging out of these places, particularly from, say, fuel pools with no containment, where the fuel is still splitting the atoms, the same atoms to boil water for millions of homes, is still being split and released into the environment, directly into the environment each day. And a lot of it's going to land in these farmer fields, and the roots and everything is going to suck it up, as I'll show you how that works. But it's also going to land on the plants themselves and the fruits and vegetables, potatoes, and everything else. So at what point do we say, stop the genocide? At what point? Because you're supposed to do it immediately. It's not supposed to happen. Nuclear power plant, farmland, bad. Very, very stupid. There's 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. Emissions, so the Sellafield in the United Kingdom, for instance, and, it's also a fuel reprocessing facility where they take fuel from all over United Kingdom, the United Kingdom where they've never decommissioned a reactor or a nuclear submarine in 70 years, UK. And you can find all kinds of study on this subject to cover up the truth. So here's some studies, vertical soils transfer by tree root systems, by meadows, which is the very basics of radiation science and plants. And so then you look at grapevines, how they suck up radiation, strawberries, how they suck up radiation, how wheat sucks up radiation. What do you do with wheat? You make pastries and cakes and you name it, cookies and everything else. Tomato plants sucks up radiation. Fruit plants, fruit trees sucking up radiation. Potatoes suck up radiation. And how accumulation of radionuclides by plants is a monitor system, because plants are going to suck it up, hence all the studies that are available. So it kind of defies reality that you would put a nuclear power plant in farmland. It makes sense if you're incredibly, despicably evil. That makes sense. But if you're a responsible environment, if you're looking at the environment, even with both eyes closed, you still should know that's wrong. And so boost from Bradwell B, which is the one we're talking about tonight in the United Kingdom, plans as third generation nuclear reactor gets a green light. Third generation reactor. And this is the official, they got farms right up to the property. And so it's always falling out. Why would you do something like that? Because you're evil? And unfortunately, when you look at nuclear, that's the only conclusion you're able to draw. Mortality in Cumberland, which is by Sellafield, with reference to cancer in young people around Windscale, which they changed the name from Windscale to Sellafield after a nuclear meltdown. They went to the theaters with buses and took people from a couple of back rows and brought them into the nuclear meltdown and got them to push the rods out of the melting reactor. They used to call a pile, right? And just bear with me. They didn't go to universities. They didn't go to nuclear businesses. They didn't go to other nuclear power plants and ask for volunteers. No. They went and kidnapped people from the back row, from the back rows of theaters. And I put together little graphics from, now, the screen there is actually a documentary, and then I built a graphics around it to tell the story.
The police from the factory had turned up looking for volunteers, and they'd brought a bus, and they decided the best way to get the volunteers was to go to the cinema and volunteer the back two rows at the show to go into the factory to, as it turned out, to help push the fuel rods out of the reactor.
So they didn't get students from the universities, nuclear universities, or employees from that power plant or other power plants. And like La Hague reprocessing similar plant in France has over 500 security, but is surrounded by farms. That's a genocide. That's murder. That's flat out murder of millions of people each year. You make them sick and eventually they die from it. Bradwell B Power Company, consisting of China and France, because United Kingdom too stupid to build their own nuclear power plant. They got to get China and France, scumbag France, to do it. The Environmental Agency, which is not obviously an environment agency, has issued a statement of design acceptability, which effectively means that the reactor has been deemed as suitable for construction, which obviously it's not. So it's just terrible. They've captured all the key positions the nuclear industry has done, right? So this is the nuclear industry. The Environment Agency is the nuclear industry. They've captured that. I was particularly impressed with the role of the HPR 1000s, which is a Chinese reactor, could play in achieving the UK governments, the Americans, to use that connotations, net zero ambition, net zero, which was Miles Allen had wrote a paper, and the United Nations jacked it. United Nations jacked it. So Miles Allen is the father of net zero. And you can trace all these cliches back. Net zero, the father of global warming. James Hansen was the father of climate change. And BP oil. Let me put those two back there. And then BP oil was the father of carbon footprint. BP oil had a massive accident, and the idea of a personal carbon footprint was popularized by a large advertising campaign of the fossil fuel company BP in 2005. A large advertising campaign by a company that wanted to blame you for being too cheap to do the job right. And now everybody's got to get screamed at over their carbon footprint because of BP oils trying to get squirm out of paying billions of dollars. And so United Nations, which is 193 militaries, jacked that narrative, right? Net zero, climate change, global warming, and carbon footprint, and they use that now to attack all humans on the planet. It's such a coward thing to do to our planet. Because the militaries are responsible for almost all the pollution. Nuclear wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the scum, degenerate, rapists, and murderer, aka military. High standards. I mean, there's nothing stupider looking than somebody in a military uniform. Literally, friggin' robots, zombies, all dressed the same, all gotta grovel when somebody with a higher rank walks in the room like they're slaves, and you can't even quit your job. High standards of environmental protection. What the frig are they talking about? What cuckoo, weirdo, bizarre, twisted dimension do they live into to think that there's environment protection at a nuclear power plant? Everything is hemorrhaged into the environment all the time. Waste management. Really? Sure, United Kingdom hasn't decommissioned a single reactor or a single submarine, and UK's waste management for the first 30 years was to put it on container ships, bring it out into the ocean, and just drive around throwing it overboard randomly in prime fishing ground for 3 decades. Crimes against humanity. The most demonic thing you could do is go out and dump it over the side of the boat, let alone do it for 3 decades. And that communities and the environment are properly protected. Like, this is absurdness to suggest that you can stop radiation from hemorrhaging from a nuclear power plant. China, General Nuclear, and of course, repressive China, and France, which is a scum, degenerate nuclear industry. One of the worst nuclear industries on the planet is France. And General Nuclear International Limited. These are genocide machines. The whole planet should pick up baseball bats and go deal with all of these companies. Just a peaceful protest, I guess, right? Put signs on your baseball bats. It is a credit to the hard work of all people involved in the assessment. All the lapdogs, the nuclear bootlickers in the UK, China, and France, that this work program has been completed on time. Yeah, because I think that's probably the only thing in the entire legacy of nuclear that was completed on time. That was proposed in January 2017. And it only took them 5 years. That's amazing. Most of them can't even tie their own shoes in the mornings. I also like to thank all who responded to our public consultation. Like, when you deal with this subject, you appreciate how stupid and silly that comment is. And provided comments. that they used to wipe their asses with, that were carefully considered and coming... Carefully considered! Really? Please, can you put a nuclear power plant in the middle of our prime farming land so you can poison millions of people every year? Could you? Please, please. I think everybody that was involved in the process to making the decision to put this in prime farmland should be locked up forever, and that their children should be taken away from them, because obviously these are monsters to build a nuclear power plant in a farm. Send their kids to Fukushima, because they're going to grow up and be evil like their parents, because putting a nuclear power plant in farmland, that's as evil as it gets. That's I hate your guts, as plain and simple as it gets. The Bradwell B disease factory was designated by the government, the scum inbreeds, in 2011 when Fukushima happened, as being potentially suitable for a new nuclear power station. So whoever done that should be arrested, and they should do documentaries on them as the worst criminals in human history. Developers have suggested that construction would take between 9 and 12 years. First off, the record in the United Kingdom for building nuclear power plants is dismal. And with more than 9,000 useful idiots needed during the height of construction, and they're going to chew through every precious metal on the planet. Everything that they need has to be the best of the best, so they can irradiate it with neutrons that can never be used again. The Environment Agency previously raised 6 potential design issues. So the Environment Agency is in charge of nuclear designs. We're freaking doomed, because they're a captured industry, regulatory. And the ONR Chief Nuclear Inspector Mark Foy, Chief Nuclear Inspector who doesn't understand putting a nuclear power plant in farmland is murder, genocide. Really? Like, you got to be pretty gullible to be in the industry and think it's a good idea to put a nuclear power plant in farmland. You really got to be some twisted, sick and demented and vicious, sadistic creature to put a nuclear power plant in countries. Essex, which is where they're going to do, is a county in the east of prison state known as England, and one of the home counties, it borders Suffolk, which is a huge place, of course, full of pro-nuclear scum, by the way, and Cambridgeshire to the North Sea to the east, Herefordshire to the west, Kent across the estuaries, by an estuary on top of that. Disgusting. The estuary of the River Thames, for goodness sake. So it's going to get carried all the way down in the huge populations, and Greater London to the south and southwest. I got this made into, I printed out, and I got bullseyes on it, and that's what I do my target practice on. These are the people that created the first fission reaction. Scum. Okay, so no, I can yell all I want, but it's best if I provide you with academic studies to show you why I'm right. Does that make sense to anybody? Said hi. Hang on. My goodness. Wait for it. Forgot to plug in the external. Come on, Dana, you got Alzheimer's or what? Get your freaking act together before you start the show. Hang on. I put my extra set of ears on there. Just in case somebody embeds the video, because YouTube hates my guts, I gotta always remember to go in, because this is the live video on right now. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Allow embedding. I go and click that, hit save, because if anybody had this up on their website, Google makes sure I got to do this twice. When I post a preamble, I got to do it twice, and when I go live, I got to do it again. There's two of me now. That'll teach you. Oh, by the way, never ends around here, does it? We got Bradwell B. We got a Bradwell B page. I got to do it. I apologize. So if you click, you can get your mugs and blankets and t-shirts and hoodies at cost for the Bradwell for a limited time at my nuclear merchandise shop to help you get the word out. And that blanket is supposed to be lengthwise, but if you scroll down, you can get all kinds of hoodies and everything. UK Bradwell B nuclear power plant genocide by radioactive farm food. Genocide by radioactive farm food. And you got some pretty colors. Some stuff only comes in certain colors, right? But most of it you get 5 or 6 options. You can get a mug and t-shirts, and you can get a legging with this. And people ask you, what's that all about? You say, look, they're putting a nuclear power plant in farmland, Bradwell B. And I dropped the price on everything to just, well, that one's, when you order it, it's supposed to be no profit, maybe $1 profit to me or something like that. So it's at cost for, I'll fix anything after the show, because I just started up before we went live. There's a link below the video where people from the United Kingdom can order their Bradwell B mugs and stuff like that. Vegetation retention and vegetation milk ratio of fallout 131, iodine 131. And they use the iodine 131 to trick you and deceive you. And so what you do is you do a mathematical extrapolation of plutonium and uranium and hot particles, 1,000 other hot particles. Trends in birth and birth-sex ratio in the vicinity of research reactors. So, Dana, what are you showing research reactors? They got no power, they're only little tiny reactors. Well, if you scale up what happens at the little small research reactors, you appreciate what I'm trying to say. Trends in birth and birth-sex ratio in the vicinity of little small research reactors, and the same thing in France too on studies, showed that there's more males than females born and less babies born, which is typical of nuclear. And so Bradwell B is a big plant with big reactors, going to have huge fuel pools, hemorrhaging radiation, trillions and trillions and trillions of isotopes into the farms and the community and around the planet every single day. So, appreciate what I'm talking about is how many atoms does it take to boil a glass of water? Well, you can put 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. So you're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of atoms created in order to boil a single glass of water. So how many you got to create to boil water for 4 million homes? So when you take that fuel out and put it in a pool, it's still splitting those atoms. And they're not in a containment anymore. The atoms are going up the stack every day in about 120,000 liters a day out of each pool. And those atoms now are liberated into the environment and float all over the planet. But the farms around it is going to be brutal. That's brutalness. That's insane to do that, which is exactly what they're doing. So the food is going to suck up all this radiation. This is why I'm trying to show you these studies, because the fuel is still splitting the atoms it would to boil water for 4 million homes, but instead it's just releasing the atoms into the environment, where you're going to end up eating it, and your children and your friends and your families and your loved ones and your countries and your planet, and all the birds and animals and mammals are going to be infested with this stuff. And there's 1,000 fuel pools worldwide. So building new nuclear power plants in farmland to add to the disease factory is obviously insane. That's the definition of insane. The human sex ratio, or sex odds at birth, are influenced by many factors, but radiation is the only one known to elevate the ratio while dropping the total birth rates. Man-made radiation may have significant effects on total birth on males and females, with a skew towards male births. And while the authors are certain that suitable precautions were taken when a reactor was handled, the finding implies these may not have been sufficient. Perhaps even greater care, even more stringent precaution needs to be employed when dealing with radioactive elements. It's clearly behoves humanity to exercise extreme caution when handling, processing, and storing the devil's radioactive material and waste. Well, you can't store it. It goes in the fuel pool. There's no containment. The fuel pools are boiling off all day long for their entire life of the fuel. Those atoms are released every day. And the next day, you got them coming again, adding to that lot. So you got an invisible snowstorm all day, every day, coming out of these forever, as long as they exist. It's a genocide. It's 100% ecocide and 100% omnicide. It's an extinction event to use this stuff in the first place. It's crimes against humanity. It's not tenable. And if they don't stop it, we need to rise up against them and make them stop. They need to be stopped. They know what they're doing, and they are vicious scum. They're incredible, degenerate scums. Modeling human genetic radiation risk around nuclear facilities in Germany and 5 neighboring counties, a sex ratio study. Again, this is what they're seeing around nuclear facilities. Without no accidents, are changing the sex ratio of these small reactors. Research reactors are very small reactors compared to the industrial ones. Disturbed human sex ratio at birth is an indicator of gene mutation in humans. Modeling the sex ratio around nuclear facilities is effective and efficient. And associated the sex ratio with distance from nuclear facilities are demonstrated. Not only nuclear power plants, but all kinds of nuclear facilities shows these effects. That's a clear warning. It's an incredibly clear warning I'm showing you. Assessment and prospective food chain doses from radioactive discharges. So they're not doing all these studies, and these people you see named there, they're making a living doing these studies. These are not cheap. They're not wasting their money. They're doing the studies to try to hide the effects of what's going on. Most of this is being done. Ecosystem uptake transfer of Sellafield And now they're talking about 14 carbon when they should be talking about plutonium and americium and neptunium and curium, which is the byproduct of the radiated fuel rods. Oh, and James Lucid, as you know, he's the first person to buy anything from my site, my merchandise nuclear site. So we're really, really thankful for that and appreciate it. And actually glad that James is the guy, because we really like James. And that's a milestone now, a precedence that site is here to get back at the nuclear industry, educate the population, and try to save the planet and the 8 million species from this despicable industry known as nuclear. Continuing contamination of the North Atlantic and Arctic waters by Sellafield radionuclides. It had a major nuclear meltdown. They covered it up for over 50 years. Then they started releasing information about it after about 50 years. Yeah, they actually refused to tell anybody what happened. And now we know that even today, there's 8 million liters a day hemorrhaging into the Atlantic Ocean from just Sellafield's meltdown, not counting the emissions from the waste or from the reprocessing plant, etc., or the 60, 70 years of releases from the site, which I'll touch on with some of these studies. Discharges of technetium-99 and iodines-129 with a 15 million year half-life that goes into the thyroid glands of all the animals and birds and insects and animals and humans, and is mutated into radioactive hormones that are distributed out through the victims' bodies and wreaks havoc on the future offsprings. Discharges with an S have increased significantly. Antipagetic iodine 129 concentrations and 127 iodine ratio in rainwater in Spain from airborne releases from Sellafield and La Hague reprocessing facilities. They're always releasing, and they just keep increasing the limits. Population doesn't understand the significance of it, so there's no objections, and they control all the regulatory agencies, so there's no oversight. And because there's no incentive to stop doing this, they exponentially now have poisoned the entire biosphere of our planet and have jeopardized the future of all species permanently. And looks like the species and humanity is going to lose the battle. And so it's important that we choke these fuckers along the way. Excuse the language. Southern Spain was affected by airborne releases from Sellafield and France. Not counting the 54 nuclear power plants. And France is La Hague. They have over 500 security there. 500 security guards. You think about how big this operation is, how much is being released when you got to have 500 security guards. Assessment of routine atmospheric discharges. Routine atmospheric discharges from nuclear power plants, nuclear installations. Like, that's the most frightening statement imaginable. And that place is surrounded by farmland. Assess the impact of routine atmospheric radioactive releases, discharges from the Sellafield Genocide disease factory. Remobilization of Sellafield-derived radionuclides and transport from the northeast Irish Sea. How much evidence do people need anyway? Because I can bring it if you need it. I'll get it. Tell me what you want. I'll get it for you. I can find it. Trust me. If I don't actually, I already got it, which would be amazing actually if I don't already have it. Plutonium-239, 240 activities in seawater. Yay. They named plutonium after the devil because it's so nice and cute. On the occurrence of radioactive fallout over Norway as a result of wind scale in 1957, a fire at the Windscale plant at Crumbia in the UK between the 10th and 11th of October. First off, that thing is still melting down and releasing huge emissions, and not just the 8 million liters of radioactive water. When you say radioactive water, you're talking about the water is saturated with isotopes, lethal isotopes to all replicating cells on this planet, resulted in the first publicized release of radioactivity to the wider environment. First off, the Hiroshima, they detonated one bomb before Hiroshima. That was the first large-scale releases of radionuclides into the environment. Then Hiroshima, Nagasaki. And then the bomb testing pre-1957. You also had quite a few nuclear power plants had melted down worldwide. Mayak, Santa Susana was 59. You had Chalk River in Canada, which is still haven't come up with a solution for it. Though mainly classified during the 1950s and 60s, recent years have seen the incremental declassification of the reports as the 50th anniversary of the accident approaches. 50 years later, they started declassifying and releasing the facts. Results indicate the radioactivity from Windscale was first detected at Bergen and Sola in the southwest of Norway and later in Varsity. Significant amounts of radioactivity being deposited at these locations during the second and third week of that month. But it actually covered the whole planet in radioactive fallout. Radiation events after the discovery of fission. The most disastrous nuclear accidents of the highest 7th level of dangers is Keystone, which is Mayak, 3 Mile Island, which is actually supposed to be Santa Susana in 1959, was 460 times more releases than 3 Mile Island, and the Windscale accident, the 7th level of danger. So Windscale was on a scale of 7. Disposal of radioactive waste from Windscale. Well, the radioactive waste everywhere is hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. Okay, so when you look at that, you got to realize this is, they've been at this for a very long time, the nuclear industry. This is, bear with me, that's the way they've been doing it from the inception. They understood right away, and I'm going to show you a bunch of nuclear power plants, including Sellafield, and including new plants like Bradwell B and other ones. Just Bradwell. Hang on, bear with me. So that's the current one they're talking about. But I'm going to shoot through a bunch of nuclear power plants. My apologies. Shoot through a bunch of nuclear power plants. So when you try to you'll see in the background, as far as you can see in all of them, are farms. Right up to it and as far away as you can see. This is what they do. This is a genocide industry. This is a murderous, hateful, despicable, coward industry. And it is fully intent upon destroying the entire biosphere in increments over time, so you don't understand what's going on. This is what they've been doing. This is what they've done. This is their legacy. Surrounded by farms. Everywhere you go, every time you look at them, 99% of nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms so they can poison you with radiation. And they build them in tornado alleys too, by the way. It's a hateful, despicable, disgusting, vicious, coward. It's a coward industry. It's incredible coward industry. No industry has more cowards than nuclear. You know what an anti-nuclear is? The pro-nuclear, anti-nuclear is what pro-nuclear call people that are smarter than they are. Did you know that? In fact, I put up some t-shirts, face masks, and other items last night with that slogan on it. Anti-nuclear is what pro-nuclear calls people that are smarter than they are. So there's all kinds of mugs and t-shirts and stuff like that with that slogan on it now at my site I put up after the show last night. And we just made up another page for Bradwell B nuclear power plant in the hopes that helps wake people up. But we should close all nuclear power plants surrounded by farms. Or we should close all the farms. Or we probably should close both of them. We got a poll tonight, if anybody's counting. If anybody's counting, we have a poll. Where are you two, Dana? Here we go. Oh, wrong way. Should UK farmers revolt against insidiously evil Bradwell B nuclear genocide power plant? We got 37 votes that, yeah. Good idea. Never thought of it, Dana. Right, so you know, if farmers care at all, they wouldn't go to work in that environment, first off. But second off, is it really worth murdering everybody to make a few lousy bucks? Is that really? Why not get a real job? Why not do something? Why not stop the genocide? What? This is two more of us. So like it's maddening when you think of even future nuclear power plants surrounded as far as you can see by farms. The nuclear fuel reprocessing plant operated by United Kingdom's Atomic Energy Authority, which is so laughable. Their kids will. Somebody asks their children, what did their daddy do? He's a scumbag with a nuclear company. Is used to reprocess all the fuel from the nuclear power stations across the United Kingdom, which is illegal in the United States and Canada. Now, the industry is constantly trying to overturn it, and they'll find little inroads where they can get certain permits to do it for certain experiments, maybe, and stuff like this. The industry has captured your universities, captured your medias, and I mean captured it too, and captured key positions in your government, and captured your regulatory agencies in increments over 75 years, and are now completely, generation after generation, of these little inbreed scumbags, cowards, in key positions. You can imagine they have destroyed everybody's future. This stuff is really important. The irradiated fuel arriving at Windscale contains a large amount of radioactivity. Well, the radioactivity from the used fuel is, but according to the US government, is 1 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. They're talking about the atoms. Chiefly in the form of fission products together with plutonium and other transuranic elements and unused uranium. Transuranic elements is a garbage can diagnosis. These are lethal isotopes to all replicating cells. The fuel is dissolved and chemically separated. This is the production of the mixed oxide fuel they're talking about, which is crimes against humanity. is separated in three principal fractions: plutonium, uranium, and the thousands and thousands of other fission products. A very large proportion of the waste fission product radioactivity is evaporated. They used to just pump it down in a hole in the ground for decades. The waste used to be taken out on the ocean and dumped for 3 decades straight, just dumped over the side of the ocean in 45-gallon drums. And if they didn't sink, they had people there who would shoot them. But like I was an ex-commercial diver, and 14,000 hours on the ocean floor. If you drop a drum over the ocean, as it goes down, it crushes. And the rims on the 45-gallon drums, it's like they'll just crumble open. And if you're dumping it in 6, 7, 800,000 feet of water, it's the destruction of our planet is the ultimate outcome of this. This stuff lives forever, pulsing energy every second. A very large proportion of the waste fission product radioactivity is evaporated and stored on the site in special tanks, which of course is nonsense. And some low-level waste accrues in large volumes as in holy shit, of water which cannot be stored, which means it's released. This is disposed of into the Irish Sea through a pipeline terminating 2.4 kilometers offshore. If it was just minute, they wouldn't go 2.5 kilometers offshore, okay? This is lunatic stuff. Out of sight, out of mind. This is an industry that has to be stopped at all costs. If 1 billion people sacrificed their lives this week to stop nuclear, it was worthy. This is the disposal of into the Irish Sea through a pipeline terminating 2.5 kilometers offshore. That should make everybody weak. That should make everybody sleepless for a month. During the past few years, the plant output has increased considerably in terms of both the tonnage of irradiated fuel and the quality of radioactivity involved as the nuclear power program has gained momentum. In fact, the input of radioactivity, particularly alpha, of course beta, neutrons, gamma, has risen faster than the input of fuel, and through the UK Atomic Energy Agency, which is a captured regulatory agency, has succeeded in minimizing the rate of increase of waste requiring sea disposal, which has increased more slowly than the output or input. So what they're basically saying is we contaminate the entire planet with just this one mixed oxide fuel reproduction facilities. It's revolting. It's not tenable. It's absolutely unbelievably outrageous and insidious and monstrous. Consequences for Norway from a hypothetical accident at Sellafield. So, like what I'm showing you, if this can travel all over the friggin' world, how much radioactivity we're talking about in food in farms around the sites? At the Sellafield reprocessing plant. Look, I'm not doing this because I'm bored. Okay, maybe a little bit. But I'm doing this because the planet's in incredible trouble. Absurd amount of trouble because of this shit for brain, coward, scumbag nuclear industry. They're scumbags. Like, these are, you don't want to walk down the road and some of the nuclear industry is walking up on the sidewalk on the same side as you. It's best to cross the street. And if they find out you're anti-nuclear, don't worry about it. They'll cross the street because they're cowards. So think about all these institutes. This is all Norway. Yeah, Sellafield is going to destroy our country. Worst case scenario, a potential threat to Norway. A potential threat. Well, United Kingdom's there, Norway's up here. The Sellafield nuclear facility, and we're using Sellafield because we have a lot of studies, it has a legacy, a history, and it's surrounded by farms also. And so why repeat the same mistake at Bradwell B and build it in farmland? Literally, how despicable can you possibly be? Right, so there's no integrity, period, to the nuclear industry. Therefore, it shouldn't exist because the industry needs incredible amount of integrity not to destroy humanity with the radiation fallout just from the power plants. The Sellafield nuclear facility, formerly wind-scaled, because I explained that earlier, because they had a meltdown to kidnap people from the theaters rather than get the military or fire department or the police or other nuclear power employees or universities to do it. It's located in the Cumbria on the northwest coast of England. The Windscale Piles, which is the nuclear power plant, was a weapons manufacturing facility, really. In operation from the 50s, produced nuclear weapons grade material. Following reorganization, the site was renamed Sellafield. Reorganization! You kidnap people from the theaters while you change the name. The predicted consequences were severe, especially for sheep and goat production, but also viable for reindeer production. They're talking about Norway and Finland. Fallout from United Kingdom. So imagine having farms next to a nuclear power plant. Radioactive contamination potential to reach Norwegian territory, sometimes within relatively short time periods. Which is true. So wherever you put a nuclear power plant, you really should put sirens out to about 3,000 mile radius. So like you could be, you know what I'm saying, right? So because radiation doesn't stop at the border or fences or anything else. Control on anthropogenic radionuclide distribution in Sellafield impacted eastern Irish seas. Discharges of low level, well, you can't stop anything when it hits the sea. It does what it wants. Discharge of low level raced from Sellafield's site into the sea for 50 years. So cesium, plutonium, americiums, which 241 is going to decay to plutonium 241, which is the last thing you want to get in your children's body or yours. Because if you get a single atom in your body that sequesters in your muscle, your organs, or your bones, your body will attack it every second for the rest of your life with white blood cells. And if you only got one of those atoms in your body, over 20, 30 years, it'll build a tumor around it with white blood cells all day, 24 hours a day attacking it. Now imagine if you get a lot of it because you're eating it and drinking it and breathing it because you're living close by it or you're eating the food from these places regularly, then you get all kinds of radiation sequestering throughout your body. Your body attacks every one of them for the rest of your life with white blood cells. But you can't do that without displacing your red blood cells. And your red blood cells are carrying oxygen and nutrition throughout your body. So for the rest of your life, you become lethargic. You have less oxygen, less resources. You're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally innocuous or benign because your body immune system now has been under siege ever since you were infested with this poisonous radioactivity that is 1 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. Using a chain of models to predict the health and environmental impacts in Norway from a hypothetical nuclear accident at Sellafield, which is, I'm showing you this because that's the legacy, right? There's all these venues, different ways that you can be poisoned. But when you get down to it, around nuclear power plants, you're seeing spikes of cancers and everything else. So a hypothesis to explain childhood cancers near nuclear power plants. Childhood leukemia, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in young people living close to nuclear reprocessing sites. An increase incidences of leukemias, which is a blood cancer, which is a lack of red blood cells in your body. Your body is hypoxia because it lacks red blood cells. And NHL which is caused by accumulating radiation in your body. If you're getting radiation treatment in the hospital, that's what will happen to your body. There's no such thing as radiation therapy. It's radiation genocide. You can't cure somebody with radiation. If they actually cured somebody with radiation, they would put them in a big glass truck and drive them around the planet. Look, we cured that person. They've killed billions of animals. If they actually cured an animal, they'd do it too. Has been recorded close to Britain's 2 nuclear reprocessing sites. An increased incidences of leukemia has been recorded at 2 different reprocessing sites. By the way, Donneray, it won't be cleaned up for at least another 300 years, they guess. Well, if they're guessing that, then it'll be 700 years or 1,000 years. Who's going to be around to correct or find out in 300 years anyway? Besides the vampires in the nuclear industry. Close to Britain's 2 nuclear reprocessing sites. So they blamed it on population mixing. Despite the fact that it's close to 2 nuclear reprocessing sites, they're blaming cancer clusters on interracial relationships. And there's all kinds of studies trying to blame it on the flu. They actually got studies where they blame cancer clusters in Cumbia for children on common flu. Oh, they all got the flu. That could cause cancer, Dana. And of course, a lot of this comes from places like Imperial College and Oxford, the most despicable institutions in the United Kingdom. Cancer clusters around nuclear installations. Childhood cancer and nuclear installations. All of these studies asking the question. And they're willing to blame it on anything but nuclear. Literally blame it on anything but nuclear. Oh, your father and mother were smoking. If that was true, everybody in France would be dead by now. New evidence linking nuclear power plants and cancer clusters caused a storm in Germany, but it has all been ignored elsewhere. Well, that's why Germany closed down all their plants, right? They'd done that before Fukushima. An overview of reports and current research concerning childhood leukemia and cancer around nuclear installations in the United Kingdom. The clusters in Seascale, the closest village to a nuclear meltdown, right? They refused to call it a nuclear meltdown. Oh, Sellafield reprocessing plant. No, meltdown. Maybe the result of germ cell mutations in the fathers of the affected children. Like, if you stood right by Fukushima when it was melting down, and you got a video camera, and the great big thick plumes were going past you, and the whole world was calling you an idiot. When you got cancer and tried to sue the government, they would say, no, you got that from the flu. Childhood Cancer Research Group, University of Oxford. Literally, they'll chase the kid, knock the kid down, cut the kid's throat, and blame it on the flu. A milestone in the history of mutagenesis. Plutonium, the legacy of Sellafield, has been discharged from Sellafield, aka Windscale, since 1952. It's named after the devil because, and by the way, plutonium being remobilized from the seabed and exported via the northern exit of the Irish Sea has been transported in solution to the Barents Seas and beyond. Past releases contributed significantly to present radiation doses from seafood consumption, and this is likely to continue. Oh, gee, Dana, that sounds pretty honest. But the environmental impact of plutonium has been assessed and found to be negligible. First off, if you get a single atom of plutonium in your body, you're going to end up with a brutal tumor that will metastasize throughout your body in increments over time. But if you're bioaccumulating, like they suggested you were, if you're eating the food from the Atlantic or the North Sea, you're going to have multiple, many isotopes of plutonium. Of course, you're not going to get just plutonium. If you got plutonium in your body, you're going to have all the other emitters too. The Center for Environment, Fisheries and Agricultural Science, Lowestoft Laboratories, Suffolk, will cut your throat in a heartbeat. Look at that. So you got all these academics, and their job is to cut your throat. Let's make it as bad as we can. Let's lie to them. Let's tell them it's their fault, like BP oil done, carbon footprint. Can changes in the population mixing and socio-economic deprivation in Cumbria, England, explain the cancer incidences around Sellafield? There's got to be something else. It can't be nuclear, Dana. Your parents were probably smokers, Dana. Yeah, bum. This is what they're like, right? They're demonic, and they know the difference. They're not naive or gullible. They're demonic. They're actual demons. Previous excesses in incident cases, leukemia, and cancers have been observed among young people born and resident in Seascale, the closest community to Sellafield, Cumbria. It is postulated that the former apparent increased risk was related to unusual population mixing. So the increases of cancer was because interracial relationships. It's like the so-called authorities in the United Kingdom, I'm sure it's no secret that these are the most incredibly bigoted and racist and prejudiced creatures in human history. They're a generation of scum. Uptake of radionuclides by the shellfish from Cumbria, so it can't be just wrinkles. Between 1984-86, wrinkles, which is a shellfish, were collected on a regular basis from intertidal sites in Cumbria coast within 14 kilometers of the British nuclear fuel site. And they analyzed them for 238 plutonium, 239, 241 plutonium, 241 americium, which decays to 241 plutonium, 137 cesium, which you can't have that without 100 times more strontium-90, and 106 rubidium. All of these nuclides, though showing considerable temporal variability, strongly correlated with each other, suggesting the primary route of their uptake was the same. So if you looked for all the other radionuclides, you would have found them too, see? And if you're eating seafood, you're bioaccumulating it. Evidence for an ineffective cause of childhood leukemia. Comparisons of a Scottish new town with nuclear reprocessing sites. Cancer Research Campaign, Cancer Epidemiology Unit, University of Edinburgh, United Kingdom. Just blame it on anything but the facts. The large influx of people in the 1950s to those areas might be conducive to a cancer epidemic. So your Cancer Research Campaign is not supposed to be the cover for nuclear. They're supposed to be looking for solutions to cancer. So they've been taken over by the nuclear industry and are weaponized against the population, and even revoltingly producing studies to blame it on anything but nuclear. That should terrify the living daylights out of you. That the people at that, there's nobody on the planet deserves to be lynched more than those friggin' people. Excuse the infection. Increases leukemia in young people that cannot be explained in terms of radiation. Really? Why not? They're living right alongside nuclear wastelands. Have been recorded near both of Britain's nuclear reprocessing plants at degenerate Durnford and Scumbag Sellafield. Those were built in unusually isolated places where herd immunity to a postulated widespread virus infection, to which leukemia is a rare response, would tend to be lower than average. And large influxes of people in the 50s, those areas might have been conducive to a cancer epidemic. Herd immunity. If that this stuff doesn't make you angry, you're not paying attention. Viruses, clusters, and clusterings of childhood leukemia. The same old perspective. During a lengthy and controversial history, why is it controversial? Focused attention on two alternative, what was the original? Infectious and localized environmental pollutions. United Kingdom emphasis is currently placed on the latter because of reports of localized clusters in the vicinities of two nuclear reprocessing plants. Now the most recent studies of the spatial clustering in the United Kingdom also supports the hypothesis that a substantial population of cases of childhood acute leukemias arise as a rare host response to patterns of exposure to a common infectious agents. This is academics and scientists over and over and over stabbing you and everybody else in the face and the back. Childhood cancer nuclear installations. Department of Public Health and epidemiological, I'm messing it all up, am I? Cancer mortalities around nuclear sites. Cancer in Crumbia, the Windscale connection. Over the hill from Windscale. The time seems to have come for the reorientation of public health services towards UK atomic energy authorities. The recent accidental overspill of radioactive atomic fission products onto the countryside around the Windscale plutonium factory raises questions which extend far beyond this particular incident. The answers may help the ordinary man to come to terms with the hazards that are the price for maintaining Britain in her place in the world of tomorrow. The public health authorities, so deeply absorbed in pursuing the minutiae of their personal services, must now recognize that they have the very serious responsibilities in the environmental field for safeguarding against the increasing risk of radioactivity. And because the productions of radioactive material is now many thousand times greater than it was in the last decades, the public health authorities cannot afford the complacency of leaving all control to the producers of the fission energy and to the atomic physicists. The problem is bedeviled by security. It must be accepted that what goes on inside certain establishments may be secret, but when the releases from them scatter injurious substances over the surrounding countryside, any consequence risks to human health are of serious public concern, especially to those people who live in the district and to the public health authorities whose duty it is to protect them. Well, they abrogated their responsibilities the minute they got the job. Although the UK Atomic Energy Authorities, aka scumbags, have taken upon themselves an overriding power to monitor and hide their own malfeasance, it would seem sensible for them to share as much of their moral burden with the local public health authorities as may be consistent with declassifying security information. They have not done so at Windscale and Calder Hall. Disposition of radioactive fallout in the vicinity of Sellafield, Crumbia, accounting for historic discharges to the atmosphere from the plant. Soil core samples from 95 locations within a few kilometers of Sellafield has been used to assess the cumulative disposition of plutoniums, americiums in the vicinity of the plant. And the disposition pattern is characterized by high levels of plutonium, up to 20,000 becquerels a square meter within a few hundred meters of the site, where all the farms are, right? Declining rapidly to lower levels, 1,000 becquerels within 3 kilometers. So all the farms within 3 kilometers are just deadly with plutonium. But all nuclear power plants have the same attributes. Secular trends in newborn sex ratios. Man-made anthropogenic radiation is also known to have played a significant role in relations to the Windscale fire and Chernobyl. A study of the movement of radioactive materials discharged from Windscale has already contaminated all the farmlands in the United Kingdom. Chernobyl, they closed 9,000 farms in Ireland and Scotland and the United Kingdom. 9,000 from 3,000 miles away. They should have evacuated the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Scotland, in other words. And how many studies do you really need, really? Atmospheric emissions. And I'm using Windscale to show you there's a legacy of this, and so they're building their current one in farmland, which meant they didn't learn nothing. But they had ample time to learn. If I can learn it, why couldn't they? A study of the movement of radioactive materials released during the Windscale fire. Windscale and leukemia. Of course, they're going to blame it on anything. Cancer and Columbia, the Windscale connections. Local variability in the distribution of fission products. There's so many studies. Ionizing radiation, human gender proportions at birth. In fact, weapons fallout from the nuclear war, they call it weapon testing. It's the same weapons, it's the same radioactive fallout as a nuclear war, so it's a nuclear war. Change the sex ratio of all humans worldwide from atmospheric weapon detonations. In order to do that, you had to poison everybody on the planet severely. But you can't do that without also changing the sex ratio of all the species. And you can't do that without poisoning all of them also. So it's easy to quantify the statement that nuclear is the biggest threat to humanity and the 8 million species and the future of humanity. The emissions from all the nuclear power plant fuel pools and meltdowns, in particular Fukushima nuclear meltdown. Environmental impact of particles emitted from the Windscale piles. Radiation events after, it never stopped, because all the fuel pools worldwide are hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. So when Fukushima melted down, France says Japan's lost control, the French should leave the country. The country. See, radiation is forever. I'm doing what I'm doing because the world needs somebody that tells the truth. And we lack that. And so I've taken it to a different level where the world needs an educational program, or at least needs a conversation. And nobody in history has ever ran a talk show or a presentation regularly that tells the truth, which is just frightening. So think about this statement for Fukushima nuclear meltdown. Resulting destruction will take half the planet with it if they have another earthquake. Swiss embassy evacuates Tokyo, fearing radiation. Radiation near Fukushima nearing levels where humans vomit uncontrollably, and your hair can be stripped from your body. Radiation levels prevented the helicopters from dumping water on the spent fuel pools. Officials unsure what to do next. Korea calls Japan's handling, which is the nuclear industry's handling of Fukushima, incompetent. EU Energy Commissioner calls the nuclear industry Fukushima an apocalypse, that the nuclear industry, everything is out of control. Tokyo's lost almost all control of the events at the nuclear meltdown, says the energy official. And United Kingdom, they wouldn't go near Japan, let alone Fukushima. So this incredible statement here, leading Japan paper, Fukushima will now be compared to Chernobyl. 4 reactors standing in a line are simultaneously spinning out of control. Well, they each had decades of reactor cores stored at the top of each of the buildings and 2 pools at the top of each building, which is 8 pools with around 6 million pounds in each one. Because they don't have a repository anywhere on the planet, let alone Japan. They were storing it in the pools. Top Hong Kong newspaper, Fukushima is a global threat. What they mean by that is radiation. This is a plutonium model from Fukushima based on TEPCO's numbers of plutonium. Radioactive plutonium plume covering the entire planet. You only got to do it once to destroy the future of all species. And they've done it more than once. It's an industry that is so out of control that it officially, publicly despises all humans and all species. It publicly despises them. And that the people that work for the industry understand that they have to publicly lash out at humanity and do everything in their power to destroy all the species in order to keep their jobs. That might sound like a bizarre statement, but that's a fact. It's a disturbing fact. The slower you spread radiation dose is more effective if it produces cancers. And cancer is one of 1,800 illnesses and diseases, not immune deficiencies and injuries, it's usually late in the last one to show up. Not always, but usually. Japan is going the very best way of destroying humanity. This is a disaster of all of humanity, the entire world. It's on an international level. Nuclear report warns of an apocalyptic scenario at Fukushima. This could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the planet. Really, a power plant breaks down and it could be considered one day the start of the ultimate catastrophe, extinction event. This is a model of the Neptunium-239 dispersals. They found plutonium in every sample. See, that's not going away for ever. Deteriorating stupid power plant threatens mass extinction around the world. Well, this model is only based on 20 days. If you let a model run for another 20 days, the rest of the planet is covered in a continuous plume. In fact, this study over there, this is a model of another study of the radioactive fallout from Japan. Just look how quick it covers most of the planet. The model stops after after a week or two. But the study to your left shows samples from Ottawa, Canada, from the capital of Canada, showing 220 million atoms in every liter of rainfall of iodine-129. So that gets, you're talking about an absurd amount hitting the ground. Then it's liberated into the environment and it floats close to the ground, pulsing energy at the speed of light every second, causing an X-ray effect throughout the whole continent. And insects and animals and everything else, birds that are breathing or consuming, bioaccumulating these isotopes, this goes into their thyroid and is mutated into radioactive hormones, which is like the worst case scenario. It's a hateful, despicable, coward, vicious industry. Michio Kaku, a famous physicist from the United States, human civilization may destroy itself. I mean, look at Fukushima. Nobel Prize winner, the only way to preserve human life is to completely turn away from nuclear power. Even a story from last year about social media said nuclear power has the risk of destroying the planet. And major U.S. paper, time to quit nuclear power altogether, threatens the very existence of human civilization as we know it. Tokyo legal expert, once an accident occurs, everything is over. Zero prospects of ever restoring the fishing grounds. All will be lost. This is the reality of nuclear energy. And finally, leading director in Japan, nuclear power generation is the only invention that may destroy the future of human beings. And so putting a nuclear power plant in farmland is the definition of insane. Right? That's the definition of lunatics, to put a nuclear power plant in farmland, because it's always going to hemorrhage radiation. And you're poisoning millions and millions of people every year at each of these from each of these locations. Alrighty then. Just doesn't seem right, eh? You work like a dog, and we get lucky to get 30 people on my show. And that's censorship on a whole different scale, because they don't have anybody else really to pick on. You got 1,000 public relation firms out there, and they got to get paid, baby. They don't get paid by rubbing their thumbs. They got to go out and find people like me and attack me constantly and relentlessly. So how did we do tonight? We got a stunning 43 votes on a video that takes the entire day. 98% says yes, UK farmers should revolt against the insidiously evil Bradwell B nuclear genocide power plant. Way to go, folks. You're welcome, Cody. And Cough Mixture donated $16 last night. Yeah, love you too, Diana. Hugs for you, honey. She's in the comment section. We appreciate it. John Coleman says, in the Netherlands, in 2021, there were 11,000 more cancer victims than in 2020. Wow. Holy cow, eh? Dale P. John Corman, appreciate you mentioning that. Dana Nasana, Port Angeles, Sandra Churchill. We know Colette's out there somewhere. James Lucid is out there somewhere. Tim Norris is here. Port Angeles, Ease. Adam No Name from Minnesota. Hi, Adam. John Cranshaw. Albert. Oh, James Lucid did show up. My apologies. I thought he was busy tonight. And he got the first buy from our new site. That's amazing. Blue Jay Outpost. Good night, everybody. Peaceware. I'm just scrolling down through the names quickly to say goodnight to anybody who happened to be in the comments sections. Good night to everybody else. Diana Sunshine Wolf would just text me. Thank you, Diana. Good night, everyone. I hope everybody has a great night and a great day tomorrow. Katja. James Megan. Butchers people's names, man. It's brutal, eh? It is what it is. I'm just, we're getting down to the recent comments here in a minute. I gotta wear my glasses, man. I'm just scrolling down quickly, trying to give a shout out to anybody that I see. Don Vincent. And everybody's sitting back at home tonight, tomorrow, and whenever they're watching this. Hugs for everybody. Thinker. Hugs for Thinker. If I miss you, I always seem to miss one or two people when I'm scrolling through the names. Albert Mitchell. You got to learn to like scroll down with your eyes, not with the mouse. Mouse. I got a mouse. Cody. Thank you, everybody. Everybody has a great night. So, if you're in the United Kingdom, check out the link to my shop. They're at cost prices. So I make, actually it's a $1 or $2 profit. And you guys need to fight back desperately. Robert and Andrew B. Yeah, Dana Nasana was saying that you can see nuclear plants in the back of the Olympics in China. I'll have to check it out later. Looks like we got it. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you can. I'm censored heavily this week, I noticed. Last week was pretty bad. Last decade actually was pretty bad. That's the problem with the truth. They can't let the truth go viral. And I ain't gonna go viral. They got me censored. I literally don't even exist. Okay, so let's shut her down. Let everybody get on and enjoy the rest of their night. If that's even possible. Is that possible? I don't know. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. We'll catch everybody tomorrow night. Take care.